Welcome to Fandora's Box. This is the podcast where we talk about our favorite fandoms in terms of our thoughts, theories, opinions. We like to do a little production analysis as well as story dissection. My name is Tyler Gardner, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Christian Almonte.
Happy to be here.
And today, I will be bringing all of you on a journey down the path of the lightsaber. I'm pretty excited. I have a lot of fun things to talk about. This is going to be a little interactive for Christian and myself a little bit, but more so Christian because there's some things that he hasn't experienced yet. I'm very excited. Christian, are you excited?
I am excited. This is a topic I haven't really delved too far into, so it'll be cool to start connecting dots. Really plugging in the outlets, the things that I know. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, the lightsaber is, as most people know, and actually, well, they might not know this fact, but it's actually the most recognized weapon, I think, and or symbol of any movie or media out there. Like, everybody knows the lightsaber when they see it. Everybody knows the word lightsaber. They're pretty awesome. To start off, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite lightsaber? Who wields your favorite lightsaber?
So, I had thought about this for some time because I knew.
Yes, I asked him over a month ago and he did not answer me.
Well, you didn't have to roast me on live.
I have to roast you.
But to say the least, I have had plenty of time to think about this. Because here's the thing: a lot of the times, it's mostly the combat involved, and it's the battles, the action, and the colors of the lightsabers that really appeal to me. But when Tyler kind of asked specifically, what Hilton style really suits you, I had to really think harder about that because there really is so much more to a lightsaber than just a glow stick, essentially. So I would say that my top three, in no particular order, I love Asajj Ventress, her style, the combination of two individual lightsabers to make it into, double wielding. The curve really helps with the agileness, especially with, being trained by Count Dooku, who also had a curved lightsaber. So that was one of my favorites. When it comes to, my childhood, I really grew up with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsabers, their hilts, and they were really fun to hold, especially Qui-Gon's. It just had such a sleek design.
Yeah. That one felt probably the most comfortable, I think, in my hand.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if you remember those $10. They were so cool. The ones that you would you'd flip open and then close up, and they had the little belt hook. Oh, that was the coolest fucking thing.
Yeah, they sold all those all the time. And then I also, back in the day, I used to have the Darth Maul one, but it broke, unfortunately. But
that was the holy grail.
Yeah, that was really good.
I think Pat also had one as well.
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, these were really good. I'd say that was because it was the locking mechanism that would always fail.
Oh.
So you could never retract it and never it
would start to just eventually just come out, just fall out. That was the worst because then you couldn't put it on your belt anymore because
and you couldn't unleash it cool because
it was already there.
Yeah. So those were my favorites. I also in terms of not products but just video game renderings as well. I love the Coder ones. I love the gold lightsabers are some of my favorite.
Like the blade or
just the color.
Oh yeah, the yellow.
Because you don't see those in probably all 9 movies.
No, you don't.
All 9 core movies.
We'll get into why.
Yeah. Those were my favorites. I know that's a bit more long-winded.
Nope.
But I figured
this podcast is we're gonna have a lot of facts, but I think it's gonna be everything that you can relate to. There's not gonna be anything quite out of left field. I think maybe until we get to the forums. But there's going to be just a lot of exciting and fun information. This is just going to be a very fun podcast, I think.
Yeah.
I have it broken down into a couple different sections. We're going to talk about the lightsaber, the specifics of it, the mechanics of the actual tool itself. Then we have the history that I'm going to go into. There's not a huge history, but we'll go into it. And then I'm going to do a little kind of sprinkling of the different lightsaber forms. I talked to Christian about this. I think the forms themselves need their own separate episode because they are just so cool. They are so in-depth. They connect so many different things canonically. So we're going to see them a little bit, but it's just going to be more a little appetizer.
Yeah, if you guys out there are fans of watching Star Wars and Jedi fights and lightsaber fights, it's going to blow your mind when you realize how much is behind every single one of those scenes. So
yep, and then
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll get into the.
I actually asked Tyler too, we're going into the forums about this if we're doing lightsabers.
He said it exactly like that.
So yeah, but for now, we're gonna be pretty satiated with the nice scrumptious mouthful we got right now.
My tummy is a grumbling. All right, let's get into it. What the fuck even is a lightsaber?
I forgot that we had that. So for those that don't watch every single podcast episode, the recent one that we did, I don't know what order these are going to come out in, but the recent one that we just did, we started with the Naruto Jutsu one. I started my PowerPoint with the exact same fucking thing.
Oh, I know. When he showed me that, I was like, no, you haven't seen this yet, but I need to show him the uncut.
He pivoted and showed me like his...
the PowerPoint presentation for Lightsaber. I'm like, there's no way that we...
So fucking good.
Yeah,
anyway, yes.
What the fuck even is a lightsaber? So, without further fucking ado, here's our boy, Ben Kenobes.
That's the boy. Oh, the old school.
No, my father didn't fight in the wars. He was a navigator on a spice freighter.
That's what your uncle told you.
Sir Alec
Even hold your father's ideals, thought you should stay here.
This is important because, as anybody can recognize, this is the first scene that a lightsaber's seen on screen.
I was once a Jedi Knight.
This is our first introduction to the lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'd known. He was the best star pilot in the galaxy. And a cunning warrior. I understand you've become quite a good pilot yourself. And he was a good friend. Which reminds me, I have something here for you. Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. He feared you might follow old Obi-Wan on some damn fool idealistic crusade like your father did.
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.
Sure, go ahead. What is it? Your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. Elegant weapon. But a more...
The more I watch this scene, the more I realize if Luke pointed it the wrong way, he might have just decapitated.
Oh, they made memes about that, yeah, where he's like looking down the barrel of the fucking thing. Yeah.
Before the dark times. Before the Empire.
How did my father die?
A young Jedi named...
They've made so many cool mashups of this scene
Oh
right
my
here.
God, yeah,
with,
the
like,
emotion.
the old ones. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, like the Obi-Wan, like PTSD of the Clone Wars.
People can roast the prequels, but they connected so well the original series.
Now the Jedi are all but extinct. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
Mind your empire.
And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
I hate that I can't hear him say it surrounds us and penetrates us without thinking of
A dick?
the Family Guy stuff. Well, yeah, the Family Guy Star Wars, because he was played by, what's his name? Herbert? Herbert the Pervert.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, it surrounds us and penetrates us.
Yeah, that was the scene, as we said. That was the very first introduction, right? But I think if I had a time machine...
1970s.
Yeah, I think if I had a time machine, there are two instances I'd go back to. One is Woodstock, and then the other one is being able to see Star Wars on screen for the first time, like everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to feel that energy. Like, when I love reading the document, like going to the documentaries where people are telling about them seeing it and then seeing it again and again and again. I'm like, yeah. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. That would make sense.
Just to add to that, the premiere would have been amazing to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, because once again, I was just listening to the Star Trek podcast that we shot and how we both referenced The Empire of Dreams being an extraordinary documentary.
Yeah.
Go watch the damn documentary, by the way. If you're listening to this, stop listening to us. Listen to the Empire of Dreams.
And then on Disney Plus, they have the documentary for Industrial Lights and Magic, which goes into the same things, which is so cool. So cool.
But in The Empire of Dreams, they had mentioned it was a worldwide phenomenon, because even back then in Japan, when they premiered it, it was completely silent afterwards, and people were like, oh shit, it must have bombed, no one's applauding or anything. But it turns out that in Japan, to be completely silent after something is the utmost respect that you can give anything. So it was a sensation all
Just
across.
like, we had a moment of
the globe.
silence for how fucking awesome that was. All right, let's continue on. Now that Mr. Ben has started us on our way, we have different types of lightsaber. Now, what Christian has in front of him is a listing of different lightsaber types along with the pictures. So we have your standard issue lightsaber.
The hell is that? Which one?
Ooh, we'll get into it a little bit.
Okay.
The standard issue, which you see pretty much every other character carries, and then below that are the different variations. So you have the next most commonly known, maybe not necessarily the most commonly used, is the double-bladed, first introduced to us by Darth Maul.
The G.
Mm-hmm. We have the curved hilt that Christian seems to favor
I do vibe with the
his
curve
girl
hilt.
Asajj Ventress, and also utilized by
The bald and
Count
beautiful.
Dooku, and also utilized by Darth Bane. And I believe Ahsoka Tano's, her newest ones are curved a little bit. I'm not so sure to the same degree and for the same purpose that theirs are curved. Because
I didn't know that Darth Bane had a curved one until just now.
Yep, Darth Bane was given a curved lightsaber when he graduated from the Sith Academy.
Radical.
We have the cross guard, first introduced by our boy Kylo Ren, and it has been
And made fun of in SNL.
Yep, and it's been and then it's been kind of not retconned, but put into different areas of Star Wars that it didn't necessarily exist. It's cool, it's fun. We have the guard shota or the tonfa, which the picture I have is not the actual lightsaber, but it's being wielded by. Do you know who wields this lightsaber? It's one of your
The
favorite.
Tonfa?
Yeah, it's one of your more. I would say I don't know if you like her, but you know her for sure. You want a hint?
Yeah, sure.
Force Unleashed.
Did Shaak Ti actually use one?
It's a red lightsaber, my guy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
That's
say.
the actual character. That's.
Force
but-
Unleashed.
But you're close.
A female character.
You're
in Force
close with
Unleashed?
Shakti.
Female character in Force Unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't the slightest idea.
You know who she is?
No, I'm afraid not.
Maris Brood, my guy.
Maris Brood.
Maris Brood.
I wouldn't have gotten that. No. You have too much faith in me, my friend.
Nah, my mistake. I'm just kidding. After that, we have the lightsaber pike or the long-handled. Do you know who used this in Force Unleashed?
Lightsaber pike, long handled, and Force Unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
Kazdan
Kazdan
I was gonna say I'm gonna avoid embarrassment and just say I don't know.
Yep, Kazdan Paratus.
Kazdan
The
Paratus.
second Jedi that you.
I need to replay Force Unleashed. It's been far too long.
Yep, Kazdan Paratus. He's one of the more well-known users of that. I cannot think of any other character.
Did any of the in the newer movie Force Awakens did the guard retinue for Snoke?
No, they didn't use lightsabers.
Because they used some weird strange.
Oh, actually, well, that's a good point. So they didn't use them, but there are certain renditions of the Emperor's Guard, like the Emperor, not Snoke. They used lightsaber pikes as well. I think they were called Shadow Guards. They were like a step up from the red guards that he always has with him.
Yeah, the ones that you see in.
And they wield actual spears, but the Shadow Guards utilize lightsaber pikes.
Cool.
After that, we have the dual phase, which Christian's probably not familiar with, but a dual phase lightsaber is one that's built in with specifics that allow it to change the length of its blade. So it'll go from, like the average lightsaber blade itself is about 3 feet, so the dual phase could probably jump in between 4 and 6 feet. There are actual specs on it that allow, like, you push a button and all of a sudden it's 2 feet longer kind of thing. The most well-known user of this type of lightsaber was a Jedi called Corran Horn, who is from he's from the New Jedi Order, so he's expanded universe.
Corran Horn.
And then
Sounds like he'd be a big success.
And then we have Saber Cane, used by Terra Sanuba from the Clone Wars. The Light Whip, which is what Christian was asking about before. We have a picture of it on the bottom. It's utilized by a couple different characters. The more well-known ones are Githany, who was Darth Bane's kind of lover before the Sith died, and the Dark Jedi Lady Lumia, or Lumia, something like that. She's also from Expanded Universe. You wouldn't know her. You would also know Githany. That's just for anybody else who might. After that, we have the light club and the light foil. The light club is literally what it sounds like. It's almost if you made a club out of a lightsaber. Huge-ass, thick log of a lightsaber. The light foil...
Who uses that?
There's only one person that was known. He was from a game. I don't remember his name. It was some alien. I just put it up there because it's part of the history of the lightsaber.
Yeah,
These are the different renditions of a lightsaber. After the light club, you have the light foil. The light foil is a shorter, more delicate lightsaber. It was actually used by Luke Skywalker to defeat the person who wielded the light whip, Lumia. You have, it says underwater, but that is for lightsabers which are built to specifically operate underwater. They do not operate underwater unless you modify them. You can modify most lightsabers to work underwater, but some, like Kit Fisto's, his will always work underwater. He built it that way because he is, he's from an underwater.
Space wheel, is it?
It's same as the Mon Calamari. Their planet's underwater, so their Jedi. I would assume any Mon Calamari Jedi would have a lightsaber that could operate underwater, like out of the box.
And then the last one's pretty
infamous Darksaber.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From the Clone Wars, and now in the Mandalorian.
Very, very cool piece of history. Very, very cool lightsaber.
Arguably one of the coolest looking ones too.
Les fucking mechanics of the lightsaber. Christian.
By the way, it does actually say "lay fucking mechanics" in the PowerPoint.
Christian, did you want to kind of describe what you're looking at?
We're looking at basically an anatomical dissection of the interior machinations of the lightsaber hilt.
It's exactly right. It is an anatomical dissection of the Skywalker saber. So it lists all the different pieces. Christian, did you want to kind of go through really quick those pieces that you're seeing, the specific pieces? You want to start at the bottom to kind of give our listeners a visualization of what we might be looking at.
Okay. Well, so to kind of parallel this with what my working knowledge is
It's a good way.
of these lightsabers. So I'll mention at first kind of what I recognize in terms of labels, and then just kind of go with everything else.
Absolutely.
So the most amount of interior knowledge that I have about lightsabers stems from Coder. That's the Old Republic, where you can build your own lightsaber essentially. And the mechanical parts that they kind of focus on in there is the dilithium power cell, the crystal.
Dilithium.
The crystal.
Lithium is in our universe.
Did I say lithium?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies.
You mixed dilithium and lithium. Dilithium.
My apologies.
We've created a new element.
Well, dilithium is Star Trek. That's what that is.
Okay.
Oh, God damn it. I'm still singing it because I was listening to the Star Trek podcast on the way.
Yeah, so that's in your head.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, we're the other franchise.
Yeah, we're on the other side of the 70s. So the power cell, the primary crystal, and the crystal energy chamber.
Yeah. Yep.
So these other new ones, to describe what I'm looking at here, we have a very, very in-depth, probably about a dozen labels on either side, starting from the top with the magnetic stabilizing ring, blade emitter shroud, blade arc tip, blade length adjustment, blade. See, I never knew what that novel.
So not every single weapon, not every single Jedi's weapon has that, but you have the blade length.
Rey's has a Phillips head screwdriver bolt.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So
not to insult Rey, but
blade length adjuster does exactly what it says, and then you have the blade power adjuster right below that. That adjusts the intensity and how much the blade can actually cut. So you can actually change it from being able to train with it, whereas if it touches you, it doesn't cut your arm off, it just burns you, versus it can cut your fucking arm off.
That's interesting. And then we have the blade power adjustment on the opposite side. Energy modulation circuits. It's kind of hard to describe auditorily, but doing my best.
I think the name itself describes most parts well enough.
Yeah.
So blade modulation circuits are simply just a way of saying these are all the circuits that are inside the lightsaber.
Yeah, so towards the middle of the lightsaber, you have the cycling field energizers, blade energy channel, and then you get to the center, the core, which has kind of, at least when it comes to people's, I'd say, most people's canonical knowledge of lightsabers, people know that the lightsabers are powered by crystals, which is kind of funny because George Lucas, when he was experimenting with different mythos and different methods to use the Force, they had come up with the idea of the Kyber crystal, which was going to be, instead of the Force, they were going to have a Kyber crystal that's like a galactic holy grail that gives everyone powers. So I wonder if he kind of kept the idea of crystals and just put them into the weaponry.
That's exactly what happened. Because when they first made the lightsaber, they said they were all going to be Kyber crystals, and then eventually changed to, well, there can be all sorts of different crystals. Kyber crystals are the most sought after, and they obviously stay relevant into the media that they produce now.
Yeah. So you got the focusing crystals, focusing crystal activator, crystal chamber, primary crystal, slightly beneath all those, and then the energy gate, which seems to surround it.
8 inner gates.
The inner gates. So then you got the lower half of the lightsaber hilts, primary crystal mount just under the primary crystal. Like I said, now I'm going to pronounce
Diatium.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it because now I'm afraid.
Diatium.
Then you got the power ring vortex, which surrounds that. power field conductor towards the bottom. I don't see much of a difference between the power field conductor and the power.
So the power vortex ring is those little slashes you see, and then the power field conductor is the actual solid mass below
Oh, I
those.
see. So we're going into some very minute shit.
Mm-hmm.
But
All that tech makes a difference.
It does.
We'll get into it.
Oh yeah, I would 100% believe that. Then you have the inert power insulator. We're now reaching the very, very bottom of the lightsaber hill.
Mm-hmm.
The hand grip attachment, which I'm presuming is very different based on.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yep.
And then you got the belt ring, because some of the Jedi's kind of use it as like a little keychain.
Some of them will either use it as a belt ring, or they'll have the little nub that can click it right onto their belt.
Yeah, which you got to see a lot of in the Attack of the Clones, where that whole Geonosis thing, they were like all.
Yeah, so if you don't see some that don't have a ring, it's because they have what we talked about. They have a little nub that clicks into a specifically built part of their belt. Anakin's and I think Obi-Wan's had a ring as well.
So needless to say, for those at home, don't break open your toy lightsaber just yet. A lot of this level of in-depthitude probably only happens canonically.
Well, if you're treating it like a real lightsaber, you definitely don't want to break it open. Because we're going to go into these little specifics, so I hope your eyes don't cross too much. We're going to get into some...
I am fully crossed.
We're going to get into some actual mechanics,
I'm
some actual
right
technological information. So if you're ready to dive in more fully to this, I'm ready to go.
All right,
we're going to keep that picture up there, exactly the picture that Christian just described beautifully. There is one thing we'll fix, but we'll get into it. It's how...
Diatium.
we already fixed that, but we'll actually go into what powers it, because you said that the crystal powers it, but in fact, what actually powers the lightsaber is the power cell. The diatium power cell generates the energy. The crystals focus that energy. Okay?
I guess that's why they're called focusing crystals.
Well, yeah, makes sense. Lightsaber mechanics. So a lightsaber standard, we're not going to talk about double. Those are just variations. But for the standard lightsaber, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, yada, yada, yada. Metal cylinder, the average lengths go from 9.5 inches to 12 inches. Those will vary differently depending on the species, depending on whatever. Mm-hmm. Regardless of variations of what the lightsaber looks like, or like whip, staff, anything, the mechanics are the same. Doesn't matter what it looks like, the mechanics stay the same. The energy is created by the diatium power cell. It is created in the form of plasma. Yeah, what's up?
So in my favorites, the curved ones,
same thing.
Is the like all the power cells and stuff, are they pushed into the curve, or is the curve just an extra add-on of metal?
They'll shape to the curve.
Oh, okay.
The metal itself is just a tubing. All that stuff doesn't have to change necessarily. Mm-hmm. The curve, it's not a perfect round. It's more like you'll see straighter
like
points.
An arc. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you'll see straighter points near the blade emitter. So like on Count Dooku's lightsaber, you'll probably see it straightens out near where the lightsaber blade actually comes out.
Right, because there are a lot of straight bits that can't bend.
Yeah, so we'll say from the end of the focusing crystal to the top of the lightsaber, that part you want straight because of how the lightsaber operates.
Right.
So energy is created inside the lightsaber by the diatium power cell. It's created in the form of plasma. The energy goes through focusing lenses and focusing crystals. The plasma is projected through the crystal. A lightsaber only needs one crystal to operate, but multiple crystals were preferable and much more common.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think the number 3 is the amount of crystals that you would want. So you have your primary crystal.
Is that encoder? Are you only allowed to have one crystal encoder? Or you can have up to 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once focused by the crystal, the plasma created by the diatium power cell is sent through a series of field energizers and modulation circuitry within the emitter matrix that further focuses it, making it into a coherent beam of energy that was projected from the blade emitter. The blade typically extends about 1 meter, about 3 feet, before being arced back into the blade containment field into a negatively charged fissure, ringing the emitter, where it is channeled back to power the cell by a superconductor, completing the circuit. This containment field also causes the blade to make contact with other lightsaber blades without passing through it like other forms of energy. This trait's seen when a lightsaber wielder blocks and parries other lightsabers. That was a lot of information. We'll break it down. Diatium power cell. That is kind of kicked on, however, creates the power. It is converted into plasma. Right before you see where the energy gate is, that's essentially where that energy is converted into plasma. Plasma is what forms lightsaber blades and blaster bolts. So it's essentially the same technology. There's one piece of difference that differentiates a lightsaber from the energy that you see coming out of a blaster. The only way they could kind of keep the lightsaber a certain length is there's actually 2 pieces of technology going on. you have the main one, the energy, which is created from the diateam power cell and the crystal. That's the blade. That's the cool color that we see. Actually, if you were to look at a lightsaber, you wouldn't see it, but there's a magnetic, like, arc. Like, there's a second force or a second energy that's created around the lightsaber. That's what allows it to stay a certain length, and what allows to cut through, and allows other lightsabers to block it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's not like
it's
that part is important because otherwise it's like you're firing off a blaster.
It would just keep going.
You just keep going.
Yeah. So you have the magnetic containment field that surrounds the lightsaber perfectly, and it's actually what allows lightsabers are really efficient. So a lightsaber only burns power when it's cutting something. So like anything else, it can only generate so much power, but the cycling field energizers and the blade energy channel, that's where a lot of that stuff happens. So the blade is shot out, or the plasma is shot out, and then it arcs back to continually provide power to the lightsaber. The only time it starts to use power is when it cuts something. So when you start cutting a door, that's when the lightsaber will actually start to generate heat and will start to suck up power. So your lightsaber can actually run out of power, and it can stop working if you just keep using it. The reason why they don't is because they're never used to their full capacity, because it basically just keeps recharging itself until the blade is broken. Does that make sense?
So would an example of damaged cycling field energizers be like when Anakin was in the factory in Attack of the Clones and it crushes
that broke the actual lightsaber itself, so of course it's not going to work. But we're talking about is the blade itself, the piece of light that comes out the top. That doesn't start to generate heat and doesn't actually come off as energy until you use it to, like when Qui-Gon was cutting through the doors on the ship in the first episode 1. That's an instance of them using the lightsaber's power. Because until then, it's just like a piece of energy that keeps going back into itself. So it's just this perfect loop of energy that doesn't run out. You could technically just turn a lightsaber on and just keep it on forever until parts wear out or whatever. So that's kind of cool, I thought. Speaking of, a lightsaber blade is massless, so it doesn't give off energy and heat until it comes into contact. So you could hold a lightsaber and it'd be like a flashlight. It's the same thing, obviously, until you touch it.
Which is one of the things that kind of is strange about the newer movies, because it looks as though they're like taking an effort to lift it when it's not actually a sword. It's just the hilt with energy.
I am so glad you brought that up. That is why we have a couple really interesting pieces of equipment in front of us. So the lightsaber blade, as we talked about, has two technology. It has massless energy, and then it also has a magnetic arc going around the entire thing. Well, that creates some weird effects. It actually creates a gyroscopic effect while you're wielding it, which is really why the only people who can effectively use it is somebody who's attuned to the Force, because they can make the minute corrections as they're using the blade. Because it's not like swinging a sword. Like a sword has a constant weight the entire time. A lightsaber's weight's just gyroscopic, so it moves around like as you're using it. And we're going to kind of do a very...
poetry in motion.
Kind of. We're going to kind of do a simulated how it feels to wield a lightsaber. So what these are, I don't know if I've shown you these before, Christian, but these are actually gyroscopic weights. I use them for Wing Chun to kind of work out my wrists and stuff like that. But we're going to create a gyroscopic force. I think these things can make between 20 and 30 pounds of pressure. So it's the same as having like a 30-pound weight once it gets spinning.
It's hard to describe what I have in front of me, ladies and gentlemen, but it's basically like an orb with a small entrance that seems to have a wheel within the middle, and we are spinning the wheel.
So I'm going to try and get one of these going. I'm going to try and get it going for you, Christian, and then I'm going to give it to you once I have enough force moving. I lost these strings that you can actually kind of wrap around it and basically ripcord it like a Beyblade.
Beyblade's not a real sport.
Get out of the chat. But this is the best way I can kind of imitate, and it kind of hit me like an epiphany. I was like, oh my god, these things kind of generate what it's like to wield a lightsaber. Because if you're ever wondering why more people in the universe don't use lightsabers, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is that they're way tougher to use than you think. Okay, good, I got this going. I'm going to give this to you in a second. So those noises you hear is the gyroscope that's in the middle of this thing. So if you try to get it going on your own, I use that part of my hand to get it ripped, and then you want to shake it like this. Like you're opening a doorknob, you're using a doorknob, and then once it's going, you hear that? That's when you start rotating your wrist. So I'm going to give this to you, and all you have to do is just keep doing this, okay? You want to palm it just like I'm doing. Don't block the opening. It's going to be really high. You can slow it down. The slower you make it, the less pounds of pressure you're basically utilizing. So the faster it goes, the heavier it is. It's pretty cool. You ready? Just start spinning. Just your wrist, Use your wrist, yeah. You don't have to go too crazy. Just try and use your wrist. Do you feel it?
So there's to describe it, it's hard, this is going to be a really hard thing to describe by a podcast, but basically I have it, in the palm of my hands and rotating with my wrist, and I really feel it in my forearm.
Yeah.
And in like the upper part of my hand.
It targets that, it targets your wrists. It's really cool. It's a really easy way and a compact way to kind of carry around 30 pounds of workout equipment. But essentially, if you were to kind of think about that, maybe not as intensely, or not as heavy, I should say, but that force you're feeling is the same force that you would feel when you're trying to use a lightsaber. It just kind of would like warp around and move around.
Yeah, it's like a constant necessitation of moving minute parts of the muscles in your forearm and
yeah, because you
wrist.
Constantly have to keep the blade
You're constantly
centered.
correcting yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly right. But that's kind of what people would feel when they're using a lightsaber. That's why they're almost exclusively used for people that can use the Force as well. Because only the Force, being able to touch the Force, allows you to make those minute corrections. We're going to stay with the mechanics of a lightsaber. We're getting to cutting power.
The cutting power. Can a lightsaber cut through anything? Answer, nah, you're dumb.
A lightsaber cannot cut through everything. What?
Nothing.
Oh, yeah. So, a lightsaber cannot cut through every piece of physical matter. There are certain things. I would say the first one is the most well-known. Cortosis. Have you heard that term before? Word before?
I have not heard of cortosis.
Okay, cortosis is... I can't remember what it is. I can't remember if it's metal or something. I think it's metal. But it's a material that not only blocks a lightsaber blade, it also can short out a lightsaber blade. So there's something about the properties of cortosis that messes with the magnetics and the electronics of a lightsaber that will actually, if it gets in contact, it'll short your lightsaber out for a few minutes. Below that we have Frick. Frick is a yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why they decided. Frick is a rare.
Phrik.
Yes, it is a rare metallic compound that can also block lightsaber blades, but it cannot short it out like cortosis can. We see Frick in a couple places. General Grievous's, his band guards, their electrostaffs.
Oh, like the purple energy ones.
They're made out of Frick.
Oh.
Yep. Let's see, what else is made out of Frick? Palpatine's lightsabers, or one of his lightsabers, has Frick elements in it, so that way you can't necessarily cut the blade in half or cut the hilt in half. And then Dark Trooper armor was also made out of Frick. Another metal that can resist the lightsaber but will not short it out. Cortosis is the only known material that can actually short a lightsaber out on contact, short of water. But a song steel is very, very rare, even more rare than Frick. And it's very hard to forge, very hard to work with, so not many people do it. The only people who kind of look for things made out of song steel are artists, collectors, people of that nature. Nobody really runs around with song steel weapons. Mandalorian armor, Beskar, can block lightsaber. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it can.
That would be an interesting... I don't know if it's going to... We don't need to go through it in this podcast, but it would be kind of interesting to learn if the Mandalorians utilized Beskar prior to their fight with the Jedi, or if they
did.
Realized it after.
They did. I don't know if they realized that it could stop the lightsaber, but they probably figured it out around the Mandalorian War. It's what it made it so tough to why they were not on par with the Jedi, but they were
putting up a good fight.
Yeah, because you had to hit him in certain spots to kill him, because there were connections within the armor because it wasn't just straight armor.
Just like most armor.
Yeah, there are spaces in between that a lightsaber could cut
There are
through.
folds in armor.
And then other things that can resist a lightsaber are force weapons.
Vietnam.
Force weapons, that's anything that's imbued with the power of the Force.
Okay.
Exar Kun, his master, Bodo Sias Bass, had a staff, a wooden staff that was imbued with the power of the Force that could block a lightsaber. Not super effective. At a certain point, the lightsaber could actually like overpower it and break through it. Anything Sith Sith alchemically made. So Mother Talzin, I believe, has used a few Sith alchemy weapons.
Yeah, it was cool. The Night Sisters were able to use lightsabers very easily.
Yep, but they also utilized weapons using Sith alchemy that could actually resist the lightsabers as well. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, and then the more ancient Sith around the Great Hyperspace War, 5000 BBY, the majority of their weapons were alchemically made. So they were swords and stuff. They liked swords. They liked actually cutting through bone, shit like that. They liked the blood and all that stuff. Armor weave, which is what the Mandalorians, sometimes the fabric in between was made with armor weave. That way you could resist a lightsaber. Wasn't always effective, didn't always work. There are different degrees to that. Not going to get too much into it. And yeah, your mom. Any questions about anything so far?
No.
So, I have a question for you. What is
I
the
have an answer for you.
most important part of the lightsaber?
Probably the stabby bit. The blade itself.
The most important part that allows that blade to exist?
Oh, you mean like of the hilt?
Sure, yeah.
Probably the, I would argue the magnetic, wave.
No. It is the crystals.
Oh.
Crystals
I
most
said,
part.
I said crystals earlier, and then it turned out not to be the right answer, so let me go with an answer.
It wasn't then.
Crystals.
Yeah, it wasn't. Oh, maybe, yeah. You're discouraged.
Yeah.
I Pavloved you a little bit there.
Oof.
Yeah. Crystals. Yeah. Without crystals.
Crystals, yeah.
Yeah, without crystals, they won't exist. So there are two. Both those pictures that Christian sees, those are both from the planet Illum, which is where the majority of crystals were sourced from. Crystals were found on the planet Illum, the Adega system, and Dantooine. Anybody who's played Quarter 1, you know you get the actual titled lightsaber cave. Crystals produce different colors, different effects. They can actually produce unique abilities, and they can even enhance force powers and force skills for a user, depending on the crystal. A lightsaber didn't require crystals necessarily, but it did need something in its place. So some Jedi or Sith, they would use physical remains. Anybody who's played Coder 1, the Crate Dragon Pearl, that can be used as a lightsaber crystal. Shards of glass, some lightsaber wielders even use
Just like regular glass?
I believe so. I don't know too much about that, but it was something that came up a bit in terms of like replacements for the crystals. And then some lightsabers actually even utilize micromachinery to produce the effects of the crystal instead. The important thing with the crystal is it cannot just be plucked from the ground and then put in a lightsaber. It needs to be prepared prior to being used.
You have to be prepared.
You have to be prepared. I think this is actually a big question for a lot of people is, do the colors have significance? Do they mean anything? And it's an opinion. It's kind of how you want to think about it.
That is, if I were to have a bunch of questions written out about a lightsaber session, I would probably ask why Sith only used that of the red crystal.
And this is why it's an opinion. There's no right or wrong answer to whether or not the colors have significance. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. It's kind of however you want to take it. You know, they could mean something. There are some specific examples where they do mean things.
I would have assumed that the reason would be because I would assume that maybe the red crystals utilize the dark side of the Force more easily.
We'll get into that a little bit because we're going to go into the actual obtaining the crystal. So for a Jedi, obtaining a crystal, they represented it in the Clone Wars. I don't know if you've seen it, The Gathering, the episode called The Gathering.
What season?
Might have been 5.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't remember what specific season.
Either way, I don't seem to remember much.
They introduced the Gunji, that Wookiee Jedi. Had up all the Padawans. Okay, that's fine. Prior to that, for those who know Star Wars before that episode, that Clone War episode came out, a Jedi could obtain a lightsaber crystal in multiple different ways. The most common way was the Master and the Apprentice would go to usually the planet Illum, especially around the time of the prequels and the 1,000 years before. Illum was the primary source. That is why in the movies, almost all Jedi lightsabers were either blue or green, simply because the crystals that were taken from Illum would only come in blue or green. They didn't really have variations. So you would have the Master and the Apprentice seek out the Apprentice crystals. To get the crystal, you would have sort of a spiritual journey. It would involve visions. The crystal would kind of pick you in a sort of way. That's how it works for Jedi. Sith, especially during the 1,000 years that they were non-existent from the galaxy, they did not harvest their crystals. I don't think they really ever did at any point. A lot of the times, if you're a Sith too, especially when they had big Sith armies, they would actually give you a lightsaber with already a crystal in it. But I would say the 1,000 years from Darth Bane till Darth Sidious, they were made in the same way. They were created. So Sith lightsabers or use synthetic crystals. They make their own crystals using special forges and the Force.
My previous experience with lightsaber crystal color differentiation, and this is probably outdated now, but the way that I originally, and I don't even, it was so long ago that I don't even remember the source, but it was that green and blue lightsabers were given based on kind of martial versus force prowess.
We'll get into that. Yeah, hold that thought. Hold that
okay.
thought. We're going to go into that exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. We're going to get into it. So the Sith, they fabricate their own crystals using a special force, and they also use the Force. They basically have to meditate. Darth Maul, when he created his lightsaber, he had to fabricate 4 crystals for his lightsaber, and it took him 4 or 5 days, and he had to spend time in a smelter, basically, like high heat. So he had to use the Force to make the crystal, and use the Force to keep himself alive because of the intense environment. Luke is also his crystal and his green lightsaber from episode 6 onwards. That's also made using a synthetic crystal, because he, by the time of the Empire, the planet Loom and any other planets that you could harvest crystals from were taken over by the Empire and were very tightly controlled. The Sith considered synthetic crystals to be more powerful. They considered them superior to a crystal that you would harvest naturally. And they actually have reason to believe this. So when you create your own crystal, it is about as unique as you could get. You focus on the crystal, you focus on the intent, which is actually for dark side users. This is where the red comes from. They're focusing on the malice that they're going to be utilizing the blade for, which produces a red colored crystal, almost exclusively.
So it doesn't come originally in red, it's transformed to red.
Nope, and you can actually purge a dark side crystal, and it can come out a different color. If you were to...
How interesting.
Yep. So in the time of the new Jedi...
So does that mean, you might be going into this, I apologize, but does that mean if someone, like say Asajj Ventress, who started out as a Padawan and had a green lightsaber, does that mean it could technically be that same crystal that she's using as her red one?
No.
Okay.
No, it would be 2 different crystals.
Okay.
So I don't know how it works for a natural crystal necessarily, but at least I know in her specific case, she didn't do that. She lost her lightsaber when she was a Jedi. She was given her own lightsabers. She didn't make those lightsabers.
Yeah.
Darth Maul was the only most current Sith.
But is it possible to have a lightsaber that was formerly blue or green, and then you can essentially corrupt it to become a red one?
I don't know. I know the opposite's true. You can take a crystal that was used in a Sith lightsaber, and you can purge it of its dark side impurities. And almost the same way you would actually make the crystal. You focus on it, meditate it, it changes its color. It might even change its properties. I don't know.
Interesting.
I don't know of any canonical or non-canonical sources where that happens. What I've seen more often is if a dark side user has a lightsaber that they didn't make as a Sith lightsaber, quote unquote, they would just use it as is. Like Exar Kun, when he became a Sith, he kept his lightsaber, which was blue, and it didn't change red. The only thing he changed was he actually turned it into a double-bladed lightsaber. That's the only thing he changed it. But the color was still blue. It was still his lightsaber, and nothing changed about it. So I don't know. And that lightsaber was made using the conventional methods of finding the crystal. You have a question?
Well, no, because you had mentioned that you had not seen any.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that happen. What I've seen is when a dark side user either turns to the dark side and keeps their Jedi lightsaber, it seems to just stay that way. So I don't know if
Which
that's
is strange because other than outside of the main movie timelines, that's where you see it. But in the movie timelines, it's almost always, other than Grievous, every single Sith that you encounter has a red lightsaber.
Yeah, well, Grievous also didn't have the Force, so he wouldn't be able to change his lightsaber crystals even if he wanted to.
Yeah, and most of his are stolen too from Jedi.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm thinking there might be something. It's a good question. It's a really good question. But I think there might be something to do with the properties of a natural crystal versus if it's synthetic, it was manipulated and created that way, so it could be reversed. Versus a natural crystal, it might just be, that's how it comes. It might just be blue or whatever. So it don't matter how much you try and fuck with it. I think if you fuck with it, actually, it'll probably turn against you and not work. Because that was a big thing too with the natural crystals. They picked their user. So sometimes you might just have to take what you're given.
So do you think that that the concept of using micro machinery in the more ancient days is still the method in which Palpatine and Sidious going forward used?
They fabricated their own crystals.
Yeah.
There are some Jedi and some Force users.
Is there a difference between fabricating your own crystals and using the micro machinery?
Micro machinery is using micro machinery in place of the crystal.
But that's as a crystal.
As a crystal.
Yeah.
Not like using micro machinery to make a crystal. Like the lightsabers that utilize micro machinery do not have a crystal in it. They have something else.
Oh, so you're saying that there's a difference between those that use micro machinery in place of a crystal and then those that use machinery to create a physical crystal.
Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
So Luke, between episodes 5 and 6, and Darth Maul, which are the best examples, they utilize special forges, like a blacksmith's forge, to create these crystals. They had to basically cook, create, fabricate, build a crystal.
How do the personalities of crystals that are artificially forged, do they have personalities, like choosing their masters, or are they...
So personalities, that's a weird way to think of it, because that seems almost like...
Well, you mentioned that they chose something. Choosing something typically requires,
I don't know. I don't know how sentient a lightsaber crystal is. There could be there's definitely some sentience, especially when you pick a crystal. In a lot of instances, you become more bonded with your weapon because you pick it, it chose you, and then you kind of learn from each other. If that makes sense, there is definitely some sentience to it. That's a really good point.
I mean, it's very similar to how in fantasy and also in SCP foundational terms, that's like having a sentient weapon or sentient tool, where it's like it doesn't necessarily have a full brain, but it does have like the power to choose what it wishes to do, what it wishes to, who is able to wield it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, this isn't exactly as cut and dry as like that. That's why you can take somebody else's lightsaber.
Just trying to solve
use
the parallel.
You can anybody could pick up it and use anybody else's lightsaber,
as revealed by
Finn. But it's very different for Mace Windu to use somebody else's lightsaber than to use his own. Now, I think going back to your question before, where with the synthetic crystals, when you make your own, you're kind of impressing your own identity into the crystal, which is why the Sith believed that their synthesized crystals were more powerful. There were instances of a Sith lightsaber breaking a Jedi lightsaber's blade because the crystal is just more in tune with somebody who makes it versus one that you would find. Makes sense, and that was the evidence, and that's why when they started to actually be able to break Jedi lightsabers in certain times, that's what happened. And Darth Maul was a full advocate of that. And also because it's like, well, we have a real trial. We have to make our crystal versus you just find yours.
So out of curiosity, this is not necessarily directly correlated, but when in The Phantom Menace, when Obi-Wan breaks Darth Maul's lightsaber in two, both halves still operate. Is there a reason for that? Because you had mentioned prior that if the lightsaber sustains damage to
we don't know if both halves still operated. He was using, in Clone Wars, he was using two different lightsabers.
Well, yeah, but in Phantom Menace.
In Phantom Menace, when he broke it, he was only using the one and that he still had operating.
Right.
Yeah, so his could be, I don't know if his was one big lightsaber. I think it was.
Or if they could disconnect, because we never learned.
Like Asajj Ventress could.
Yeah,
I think
Asajj Ventress can, but I didn't know if, Maul, if it's was just...
I think,
if you see the toy version,
how his is set up is because he can. Well, actually, we've actually seen this. We saw this in the movie when he fought Qui-Gon for the first time. He only used one side of the lightsaber, which means they seem like they're separate, not separate, two separate lightsabers. I think they utilize separately. So if you cut more of one side and keep the powering, because if we go back to this image, think of this, but there are two of them stuck together. So if you cut right in the middle, maybe he fucks up the power. Maybe Obi-Wan fucked up the Dietian power cell at one end, but the other side was still intact.
Okay, so if you cut basically by the hand grip attachment, it's feasible to still have the rest of it operate.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have one power cell for both ends of the lightsaber. You would have duplicates of the entire technology of a lightsaber, but just on different ends of the lightsaber for double bladed.
Plus, it just looks really cool.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Now, colors having significance. We talked about its opinion. In 4000 BBY, specific lightsaber crystals were chosen to represent different Jedi classes, which is what you were talking about, where I kind of stopped you.
For those who didn't watch our last podcast, BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin.
Yep. So what you were talking about a few minutes prior was this, and this came up in Coder.
Did you want me to divulge my understanding of it?
Well, I'm gonna kind of explain. I think we're right on the same page.
Okay.
So specific crystals were chosen to represent different Jedi classes. Blue indicated the Jedi Guardian, which was a Jedi who used the Force, and they were more physical, more martial. You have green indicated Jedi Counselor, who preferred to reflect on the Force, and they would fight the dark side kind of as the light side versus the dark side, but not martial so much. And then yellow indicated Jedi Sentinel. They honed their skills to balance combat scholarly pursuits. In later years, this fell out of practice. Only the temple guards, which I don't know if you saw because you didn't go that far. No, you wouldn't have seen them. But they're lightsabers in that book.
Mm-hmm.
You find the temple guard lightsaber.
I did very much enjoy the gold lightsabers.
Yeah, those are yellow. They were the only people past 1000 BBY who would have not a green or yellow, or green or blue.
I don't think we've ever seen a gold lightsaber in any visual medium.
Yeah, they're the color spectrum.
Not even Clone Wars, I don't think. You saw the other one.
No, the lightsabers of different color were very rare past 1000 PPY, simply because the other sources of lightsaber crystals didn't exist. Dantooine got fucked up even before.
So was the black lightsaber originally created by the Mandalorians, or did they steal it from a Jedi?
I don't know too much about the history. I don't even think there is that much history written about the Darksaber. Darksaber was put in for the Clone Wars. They didn't really go into the history until Rebels came out.
Yeah, well, I remember in the Mandalorian, television show, they had mentioned that it was kind of like the regalia of the commanding.
Yeah, so what happened was the history of the Darksaber, for what I know and how light it is, it was created by a Mandalorian Jedi, however many years ago. I do not know when. When he died, it was housed and stored in the Jedi archives. Mandalorians infiltrated and stole it back, and then they used it as exactly how you said. They utilized it as a symbol for the Mandalorians,
right, yeah.
or themselves. That's why it was so important.
Regalia,
the crap about it, choose like in the Mandalorian, the crap about it not being able to be utilized by a person, that was stuff they made up for the show. That's not how those things work. I mean, that's how they wanted it to work, but until up at that point, that wasn't how it worked.
Well, to be fair, we haven't seen any lightsaber of its nature prior, so.
Yeah. So we have blue for the Jedi Guardian, green for the Counselor, yellow for the Sentinel, and then red would indicate anybody who was a dark side user. That's just kind of how, as we talked about, when they.
And then Samuel L. Jackson liked purple.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happened.
But it ended up fitting in. It ended up fitting in because of, I think, what you're about to say, which is that it's because he has a Sith's form of martial training.
No, that has nothing to do with that. I don't know where he got his crystal from, but about Samuel L. Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber because he knew this big ass fight in episode 2 with all the Jedi. He knew that was going to happen, so he wanted. Well, I got to stand out.
Yeah.
But in our next episode, we're going to go a little bit into the canonical history of how Mace Windu's lightsaber changed color between episode 1 and 2. So I hope you guys stay tuned for our next episode of Pandora's Box.